Okay folks, buckle up, and this is part 3 of the CERN Time Machine trilogy. Links to the first 2 are in the description below. Now tonight, the pieces lock, including 2 CERN link rituals that you need to see for yourself. Get ready for a wild ride. The message didn't come from our future. In part 2, we chased a message backwards through time, a signal with no sender, arriving before anyone had the thought to write it. And we left one thread hanging because it refused to get tied off. That message had to come from somewhere, and it didn't come from our future. Now, I've sat pondering that for weeks now, turning it over, trying to make it behave. And every time I do, it points in a direction I didn't expect, and frankly, didn't want. Not forwards, not backwards, but sideways, towards something that has been sitting right beside us this whole time. Close enough to touch, quiet enough that we never thought to listen for it. Now tonight, we follow that thread all the way to the wall it disappears behind. Past the CERN sacrifice video, past the Gotthard ceremony, and we find out who is standing on the other side. Because CERN isn't knocking anymore, they are reaching for the handle. Right, so I've opened by promising you we're going to meet whatever lives on the other side of reality. Which is a fairly enormous claim, but here's the honest bit. I don't think the message for our own future idea ever fully worked, and it nagged at me for weeks. The sideways version is the only one that stopped the nagging. Now, whether that makes it true or just makes it tidy, I genuinely can't tell you yet. Stick around and judge it for yourself. The Bootstrap Paradox and why the message had to come from sideways. Now, if you're new here, this is the short version. Across 2 videos, we built a case that CERN may not only be smashing particles, it may have opened a channel that lets information slip backward in time. Now, not people, not machines, just knowledge arriving early. And that idea left us with a problem we never solved. The problem is the origin. If a piece of knowledge travels back and teaches us the very thing we later send back, then nobody ever invented it. It sits in a closed loop, forever referencing itself, with no first author. Now, physicists call this the Bootstrap Paradox, but the tidy name hides how strange it really is. Information should have a birthplace. This kind doesn't. There's only one clean way out of that loop, and it's the possibility we skirted around last time, because it changes the shape of everything. Now, what if the information never started in our timeline at all? Now, sit with that for a second. Every explanation we've reached for so far assumed the message came from further along our own road, us later warning us now. But a loop with no origin isn't a road, it's a bridge. And a bridge, by definition, joins 2 different places. If the knowledge didn't begin here, and it didn't begin in our future, then it began somewhere alongside us. Close enough to touch, far enough that we've never seen it. That's the thread we're going to pull tonight. Not a signal that travels back along our own timeline, but a channel that opens sideways into a reality that isn't ours and lets something cross the gap. And once you accept the sender lives next door rather than up ahead, a very old set of clues at CERN stops looking like coincidence. Okay, I want to be fair to past me here, because the time travel version wasn't stupid, it just quietly fell apart the moment you asked where the first copy came from. That's the thing nobody in the comments could answer either, and a lot of you tried. So, the bridge not road reframe is me admitting the old model had a hole in it. Now, my working hypothesis now is much simpler. So stop asking where the message was sent and start asking from where. Same evidence, completely different neighbour. The hidden sector is not a tunnel, it's a room next door. Now, here is a phrase that comes from CERN's own physics, not from a forum at 2 AM in the morning. The hidden sector. It's real, it's a published idea. The theory says our universe might contain a whole family of particles that barely interact with the matter that we are made of. They don't reflect light, they slip through solid objects, they leave almost no fingerprint. Now, physicists propose them to plug gaps in the standard model, and they hand them names like dark photons and hidden Higgs states. And last time we treated the hidden sector as a channel, a wire the message travelled down. And tonight I want to reframe it because I think the metaphor was wrong. A channel is something you send things through, but the deeper you read, the less the hidden sector behaves like a wire, and the more it behaves like a room. A space with its own contents, its own rules, its own particles that own nothing to ours. A channel is empty until you use it. A room is occupied whether you look inside or not. Think about what that does to everything we've said. The message didn't travel down a hidden sector the way a call travels down a phone line. It came out of one, the way a note gets slid under a door from a room you didn't even know was there. The hidden sector isn't the medium, it is the location. And if it's a location, the only honest question left is what or who is keeping it warm. CERN describes these particles as weakly coupled to our world, barely touching, but barely touching is a long way from not being there. A neighbour behind a thick wall is weakly coupled to your living room too. You just don't hear them most days. But that silence does not mean the flat next door is empty. Okay, quick confession. When I first wrote Hidden Sector in Part 2, I pictured a cable, because cables are somehow comforting and make sense. Our rooms are much worse. Rooms have furniture and occupants and occasionally a bloke standing very still in the corner. The reason I've moved to the room version isn't just vibes. It's that the maths treats these particles as coexisting with us, not connecting to us. So the honest upgrade to the theory is this: we may not have built a phone line, we may have found a wall we've been leaning on for years. Mirror matter and the shadow universe. Now we go one layer deeper, into an idea that sounds like fiction but has decades of serious papers behind it: mirror matter. The proposal is almost unsettling in its symmetry. Now, for every particle we know, every electron, every quark, there may be a mirrored twin that behaves the same way but sits just out of reach. Now, this isn't antimatter, it is something stranger. A parallel set of physics, a shadow copy of the material world, sharing the same space that we do, but touching us so faintly that it stays effectively invisible. A second universe, layered over the first, using our rooms without ever knocking the furniture. If that is real, it reframes the oddest detail from Part 2, the one we flagged and walked past. Remember the Higgs singlet, the particle proposed as our messenger. And the strange thing about it, in the maths, is that it seems to leave. It couples to our world, then its influence thins out and drops from the equations, as if it stepped out of the frame. And we called that travelling through time. But watch what happens if you slide mirror matter underneath it. The singlet isn't vanishing, it is crossing over. Moving from our physics into the shadow physics, walking out of our room and into the one layered on top of it. Now, from our side, that looks exactly like disappearing. And from the other side, it looks like an arrival. That single swap recontextualizes the whole series. In Part 1, we thought we'd found a clock. In Part 2, we thought we'd found a telephone. Now, a particle that steps between two parallel sheets of reality is neither. It's a messenger with a passport. Something that can leave our world entirely and come back carrying whatever it picked up on the far side. So, the question stops being whether we can reach them. It becomes how long until something makes the crossing in the other direction. Mirror matter is complicated to say the least, and I get it. If you talk about an invisible shadow universe sharing your kitchen, then don't be surprised if people politely start moving away. So, let me be straight. This part is the most speculative brick in the wall, and I'm leaning on it pretty hard. If mirror matter turns out to be nonsense, the whole passport particle idea wobbles. But my honest position, it's the cleanest single explanation for why this singlet keeps behaving like it's got somewhere better to be. Now, clean isn't proof, but it's a start. Micro black holes, CERN's accidental doorway to the other side. Now, so far, we've argued about where the message comes from. We have not explained how the door gets opened. And this is where the most buried chapter of CERN's history matters, the one they spent real money trying to settle before the machine ever switched on. Now, before the LHC's first run, there was a genuine fear, argued by credentialed physicists, that colliding particles at those energies could create micro black holes. Not the planet-eating kind, not supermassive black holes, but microscopic and fleeting, but black holes all the same. Now, the worry was serious enough that CERN commissioned a formal safety review to answer it in public. Now, that review leaned heavily on one idea to reassure everyone: Hawking radiation. Now, the theory that black holes slowly leak energy and evaporate. If micro black holes formed, the argument went, they would wink out instantly and harm nothing. Case closed. Now, there's a quiet problem with resting the safety of the world on that. Hawking radiation has never been directly observed, not once. Now, it is elegant, it's widely believed, and it may well be right, but it's a prediction being used as a guarantee. The safety net was woven from maths that no experiment has ever confirmed. Now, layer on the paradox that haunts black holes at the deepest level. Now, physics insists information cannot be destroyed, yet a black hole appears to swallow it whole. So, where does that information go when the hole evaporates? Well, nobody's got a completely settled answer. It's one of the real open wounds in modern physics. Now, hold that against everything we've built tonight. If micro black holes did form at CERN, briefly and quietly, they would not be destroying the information that fell in. Information has to go somewhere. And we spent this whole video describing a somewhere, the room next door. So, the micro black hole was never a weapon, it was a doorway. A pinprick that opens for a fraction of a second, dumps information out of our reality and then closes. And on the other side, something receives it. Not a destroyer, but a router. This is the section I'm most nervous about because I've basically taken two real, boring, well-documented facts, the safety report and the black hole information paradox, and welded a doorway onto them. Now the facts are solid. The welding is mine and you should treat it that way. Now here's the bit that keeps me up though. Everyone argues about whether the information survives a black hole. Almost nobody asks where it goes if it does. And I'm not saying the answer is next door. I'm saying that next door is the only address we've got. The rituals, someone at CERN already knows. Now, step back from the physics for a moment, because there's a human layer to this story that is harder to explain than the equations. In 2016, a video surfaced, filmed at night on CERN's own grounds. It showed a group in dark robes staging what looked to be a mock human sacrifice in the courtyard beneath the statue of Shiva. Now, it was caught from a window above by someone who clearly wasn't meant to be filming. CERN's official response was that it was a prank by staff members, an internal joke that got out of hand. And that may be exactly what it was. But it happened on a working scientific campus during a period of major energy increases on the collider. And the people involved apparently had the run of the place after dark. Now that same year, on the other side of Switzerland, the Gotthard Base Tunnel opened, the longest tunnel ever cut through the Earth. 57 kilometers of rock carved open under the Alps, and finished just as CERN was pushing the collider into a higher energy era. Now you'd expect a ribbon cut, a speech, hard hats and handshakes. Instead, the opening ceremony, attended by European heads of state, became a long stage performance, heavy with symbolism, that felt wildly out of place for a piece of civil engineering. Robed figures moved through the space like a procession. A horned central character held the middle of the stage. The imagery kept pulling downward, descent, underworld, something older than a railway. All of it broadcast openly, leaders in the seats, cameras rolling, framed without irony as a celebration. And watch it once and you can shrug. Watch it knowing what else was happening in Switzerland that year, and the discomfort is harder to file away. And then there is the statue, those robed figures gathered under, Shiva, mid-cosmic dance, the dance that both creates and destroys worlds. CERN chose it as a gift and a mascot. Of every image in human history, a lab built to break matter apart picked the deity of destruction and renewal, caught in the exact motion of ending one cycle and starting the next. Now, I'm not going to tell you what any of that means. I'm just going to sit with you in the discomfort of it all. Now, you don't have to believe in a ritual to notice the pattern. When an institution reaches for the imagery of doorways, descent, and the destruction of worlds over and over in its art, its ceremonies, and its late-night pranks, the unsettling possibility isn't that it's a cult. It's that someone there understands exactly what they are building. Now, I know some of you click purely for this bit, and I know others are already typing that it was obviously a prank. And you genuinely might be right. A mock sacrifice is exactly the sort of thing bored physicists do at midnight, because physicists are weird. Well, I say that with love. Now, my take is boring and possibly disappointing. I don't think the robes prove anything supernatural. I think symbols are a tell about what people are thinking about. And a lab that keeps circling destruction, doorways and descent is at the very least thinking about the same things we are. The Mandela Effect as bleed-through. Here is where this stops being about a lab in Switzerland and starts being about you. We've all felt it, a memory that is crisp, specific and shared with thousands of other people, and simply wrong according to the record. A line from a film that was never spoken, a logo detail that never existed, a country's borders remembered on the wrong side of a map. In part 2, we floated the idea that these Mandela effects might be read receipts, little confirmations that a message had landed and reality had adjusted around it. Now tonight, with everything we've reframed, I don't think a read receipt goes far enough. A read receipt is clean and intentional, a signal sent on purpose. But if there is a room next door, a parallel sheet of reality, and if CERN has been opening microscopic black holes, pinprick doorways between our side and theirs, then some of what crosses over won't be neat messages at all. Some of it will be spillage, contamination, details from the other side, seeping through the gaps and settling into our world where they don't quite fit, including into our memories. That's the darker reading of the Mandela Effect, not messages, but leakage. The wall between the two realities was never soundproof, and every time the machine runs, a little more bleeds through. A misremembered logo isn't your brain failing. It's a fragment of the version next door, arriving where the seal is thinnest, inside the one place we assume is entirely our own, our recollection. And this is the part that unsettles me most, because it's the only piece of this whole theory that you can test yourself. You don't need access to the collider. You have your own memory, you have the record, and sometimes they disagree with a confidence that should not be possible. Now, we've spent 3 videos looking at CERN from the outside. If this reading is right, the evidence isn't only in Geneva, some of it is already inside your head. But we also need to remember that our brain doesn't store memories as single, unchangeable files. Instead, it breaks experiences into tiny fragments like sound, colour and emotion, scattering them across different regions of the brain. And when you recall a past event, your brain actively reconstructs it from these scattered pieces. This flexible process means your current beliefs and new information constantly fill in any missing gaps, often creating vivid, confident memories of details that never actually happened. Alright, I've got to check myself here, because your wrong memories are leakage from a parallel universe is a very convenient theory when we talk about parallel universes. It explains everything, which is usually a warning sign, not a strength. Our memory, the great deceiver. But memory's famously rubbish. People misremember together all the time, and that is the dull, likely answer. So, why do I keep circling this? Because dull answers don't explain why the mistakes are so specific and so shared. I'm not asking you to abandon the boring explanation. I'm asking you to notice the exact moment it stops feeling big enough. The FCC, from cracked door to permanent connection. Everything we've described so far has been temporary. A micro black hole lasting a fraction of a second. A message that slips through and is gone. A door that cracks open and swings shut before anyone can look in. Brief, deniable, easy to wave off as noise. That era is ending. CERN's next machine is already on the drawing board, the Future Circular Collider, the FCC, roughly 4 times the circumference of the current ring, engineered to reach energies near 100 tera-electron volts, many times what the LHC can manage today. Now hold that number against the theory that started this whole series. The original Time Machine paper, the Arafeva and Volovich work we opened in part 1, argued that this kind of effect needs energies where quantum gravity comes into play. TeV scale gravity. Now for the current machine, that was a stretch, right at the edge of the possible. The FCC is designed to walk straight into that regime and set up shop. So, think about the difference in plain terms. If the LHC has occasionally been cracking a door, a pinprick, a flicker, a gap that exists for less than a heartbeat, then the FCC is a change in kind. It's the difference between a gap that opens by accident and closes on its own, and a doorway built to stay open, to hold the connection steady, to make the crossing routine. And that reframes the stakes of this whole conversation. Up to now, we've been asking about the past. Did something already happen at CERN? Did a door open once? And the FCC drags that question into the future tense. It stops being did it happen, and it becomes what are they about to make permanent? A one-time anomaly is a mystery. A permanent connection to the room next door is a decision. And somewhere in the planning documents, quietly, that decision has already been made. Now the numbers here are all real. I've been building a haunted house, and this is the load-bearing wall. Bigger ring, higher energy, quantum gravity regime, all generally in the plans. And what I've added is the mood. A physicist would tell you the FCC is about precision measurement and hiring a lot of engineers. And they would be completely correct. My only pushback is small. And when you build the exact machine your own fringe theory has been asking for, you don't get to be surprised when people like me show up asking what's behind the door. The loop closes. If the message said don't stop, the decision is already made. Now let's bring it all the way back to the thread we started with. A message with no origin. Knowledge that never had a first author. And we said the only escape from that loop was a second reality, a sender next door instead of up ahead. And across this video, we've built the bridge between here and there, particle by particle, door by door. Now there's a final turn in the loop, and it's the coldest one. Now suppose the message really did arrive. Suppose it crossed over. Suppose we understood it. And suppose, as the theories of these things insist, that it can only ever carry information consistent with what already happened. A note from the other side that reality won't let you contradict. And suppose that note said something simple like, don't stop. Follow that to the end. If a message came through telling CERN not to stop, telling them to build the next machine and the one after that, then in the timeline that it was sent, the machine was already built. It has to be. The message couldn't exist otherwise. Which means the FCC isn't really a proposal anymore. It's not a choice being weighed in committee rooms. It's a memory of the far side arriving early, describing something that, from their vantage point, is already done. And that's where free will quietly collapses into the loop. We think we are deciding whether to open the door. We are holding meetings, running the numbers, debating the budget, imagining we could still say no. But if the note already came through, if we have already received the confirmation from the other side, then the debate is over. It's just theatre. The handle turned a long time ago. We're just the last ones to feel it move. So, we end where the hook began. CERN isn't knocking anymore. And the unsettling truth might not be that they are about to walk through the door. It's that, from the perspective of whatever sent the message, they already have. And we are only now catching up to a moment that on the other side is already history. But there's one thing that still doesn't sit right with me. If a message came through telling us to keep going, the obvious question is what it was so determined to steer us away from. And what happens in the timeline where we listen and we stop? But that is a door for another night. So that's my grand finale, in which I confidently announce that free will is theatre, and then presumably go and make a cup of tea like a man with choices. I do see the irony. Now here's where I actually land. I don't think the future is fixed. I think the loop is a fun way to feel briefly terrified on a weeknight, and that's okay, it's allowed. But the FCC is real. The open questions are real. And we'll build it because we always build it is a very human habit dressed up as destiny. Tell me the memories that bother you the most. I read them all. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Now, I've just launched a Discord server for better community chat, where we can all discuss and share ideas about the weird and the wonderful. That's completely free, so why not give it a go? Link to the Discord is in the description below. Also, many of you have told me that you don't get notifications on my new videos or even the live streams. And this is because of the new way YouTube works. In order to get notified, you need to select the bell icon and then select all, and that will do it. Otherwise, YouTube just won't send you the notifications. As always, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. It really helps out the channel and I'd really appreciate it. Okay, my friends, be safe, and until next time, stay curious.